Hey everybody, my name's Scott, and if I can, you can. Today's video I'm going to be making a cutting board for my mother for Mother's Day because I love her very much and because my YouTube channel is new and I'm desperate for content. Also, I'm pretty sure that if you have a DIY woodworking or maker YouTube channel, federal law says you have to make a cutting board. So I'm using 1x6 pieces of mahogany and maple. They're about 4 feet long, and I'm cutting them down into strips about 1.5 inches thick. Each board made about 4 strips. Now, this table saw does not have a guard or a writhing knife attached, and both of those things are very important. A writhing knife and a guard can help prevent kickback, and if you want to know what kickback is, just check this out. And in slow-mo. Now, if that piece was any bigger or if I wasn't out of the way, that could have hurt me. So the end cutting board is going to be roughly 12 inches high by about 18 inches long and about 1.25 inches thick, depending on sanding and some other things that'll come up later in this video. And basically right now I'm just kind of Forrest Gumping my way through this, trying to figure out how many pieces I need and how long those pieces need to be in order to make a cutting board with those dimensions. Here I'm just using a square to mark lines that I'm going to be using when I use the miter saw. Keep in mind, I'm using a fairly expensive contractor saw that belongs to my mother-in-law that my late father-in-law used to use for his construction company. And she was nice enough to let me use his old shop. You don't need any of these expensive tools. I have a $100 Harbor Freight chop saw and a $100 Harbor Freight table saw, and they both work just fine. And here I'm just cutting the pieces to length, a little over 18 inches. And now I'm just trying to figure out the basic layout, just based on the grain direction and how well the board is lining up. I'm using some pipe clamps here. I've never used pipe clamps before. Now I'm just laying the boards down on their ends, and this is where I'm going to apply the glue for the glue up process. Yay! I'm using Titebond 2. It's water resistant, and it seems to be the woodworking glue that pretty much all the YouTube woodworking videos suggest. Got a little glue on the outside. That's okay though. And I'm just clamping it down until I get squeeze out on all the boards. And I'm using these 2 whiteboards, or 4 whiteboards, to clamp down with packing tape on them to keep everything together and to keep the cutting board from bending or warping. And the packing tape is to prevent the glue from sticking. And I'm using even more clamps. I don't think you can have too many clamps in your wood shop. Alright, now I've waited about 2 hours and everything seems to be dry except for the squeeze out, and I'll go ahead and scrape that out in a second. And please ignore the expensive chisel that I'm using to scrape off the squeeze out. I started to use just a sander, a random orbital sander, to get all the glue out and to make it nice and smooth. And then my mother-in-law reminded me that she had a portable thickness planer in the garage, and so I decided to use one of those. Again, never used one of these before. So I ran a test piece through first, and then once I got confident with that, I ran the cutting board through. And that is when I ran into my first issue. The cutting board got caught up on the guides on the inside, and I panicked and actually brought the knife down onto the cutting board even further and made a nice pretty gouge in the piece that you can see in the corner there. But no worries, I just decided to use the planer to plane it down a little bit more and get rid of that gouge. And after a couple of passes, the gouge almost disappeared, and the board got pretty flat and pretty smooth. And it was at this point that I remembered I forgot hearing protection, because all these tools, especially the planer, are really loud. In my opinion, the two pieces of safety equipment that are the most important are safety glasses and hearing protection. And I'm going to be using this random orbital sander. I've never used one of these either. These are pretty cheap. You can pick one of these up at Walmart or Harbor Freight for around 20 bucks. Oh, and did I mention there's going to be a lot of sanding? Hey, I'm just having a little bit of fun. Really starting to see the grain pattern and how the grain's popping, and I think it looks really, really nice. I like the contrast between the maple and the mahogany. I don't know if I said before, but this project is going to require a lot of sanding. That was the edge that I accidentally got a little bit of glue on, but I'm just going to use the sander and get some of that off. Yay! It was at this point that I decided I think I'll just block the camera with my really dirty shirt. And also I'm going to use a router for the very first time. Now I don't have a router table, and so I was just going to freehand this around the cutting board. And I'm just trying to line it up and set it up, and I thought I had the bit at the proper depth, and I was just using a round over bit, and then I realized that it was not set at the proper depth, but no worries. What I did was just adjust the depth of the bit and kept going. Now you should be using, or I should be using, a router pad, which is basically a pad that you put on the table that prevents your piece from slipping, or you can just clamp your piece in place. And I didn't do that, and I should have, and I will next time. And again, I've never used a router before, so another first. And I'm using 80 grit sandpaper for the random orbital sander and 220 grit. You could use something in between if you wanted to, but I just went with these 2 grits. Nice thing about the random orbital sander is it doesn't just spin, which would leave swirl marks. It's got this random orbit pattern, and that's where it gets its name from. And here I'm using 3000 grit hand skin to make it even smoother. This is cutting board oil, which is just food grade mineral oil. You can use food grade mineral oil. You can pick up at the supermarket. It's a lot cheaper, but I happened to be at Menards when I saw this, so I bought that. And you just pour it on and rub it in. And you can really see here that it's really starting to make the grain and the color of the wood really pop. You can definitely see the differences in the grain direction and pattern and color. And I think it's really nice. I can't wait to take on more wood projects and try out other different finishes. And just did this a couple of times, waited an hour between coats and added another one. It really soaks it in, and I think it turned out great. So part of my inspiration for this was a book by David Picciuto called Make Your Own Cutting Boards. It's one of the only cutting board books on the internet. He also has a YouTube channel called Make Something, so I'll leave a link and check that out. This was a really fun, fairly easy and inexpensive project. My mom really loved it. I think it turned out good, and I can't wait to make more in the future. So if you guys like this, please like it, subscribe, share, and leave a comment. And as always, if Scott can, you can.